call the meeting to order. Will you please rise for the pledge? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, good evening. Thank you all for being present today. It's really nice to see everybody. Our first item of business is a recommendation to hire a school nurse, which I'm going to turn over to Adam.
It's my privilege tonight to introduce Amanda Leases as a candidate for board's approval this evening for our school nurse position. This is probably the quickest hiring process we've ever had. That doesn't mean that it was rushed or that we cut any corners. We found out that we had received a grant to support this position, and we kind of figured, why wait? So we had posted within 48 hours of receiving a notification. We had a very competitive applicant pool. We weren't really sure what to expect because we've not hired a school nurse ever in our district history to have our own person. And so there was a bit of a research project to figure out all that it entailed, and then we had a very competitive applicant pool, which was great. In fact, we had to shut it off at a certain point after we filled all our interviewing positions. And Amanda just stood out for so many different reasons. The Leases family is a Williamston family, children in the district. Jacob teaches at our high school and coaches on the football team. One of the big things that Amanda brings to the table, both pediatric nursing experience, but also 6 or 7 years as a school nurse. And so if you're going into a position you haven't had before, having someone with that expertise that can kind of assist the district in terms of how to implement that role in an effective, efficient manner was extremely important. And then she's going to be an awesome fit. That's one of the key things we always look at anytime we hire folks into our district. Certain attributes about being able to work together as a team, and just having a personality that's going to mesh with those of the folks that we have. And she's going to be an excellent fit all across the board. This is probably, I was joking with them before the meeting started, it's probably the most anticipated, most exciting position we've ever hired. And I've had more people come up to me, just could not be happier that we're going to have this role in our district. And so really looking forward to everything that Amanda will bring to the table for us. And pending your approval this evening, looking forward to her getting started.
Adam, where will her office be?
So the office is going to be located in Explorer Elementary. One of the offices kind of back in that complex there.
Sure.
But position will circulate throughout the district, but that's where we had the space available.
Great.
Are there any other questions? I would just like to add that I think this is really an exciting time for Williamston. I think this board made it a priority to raise our fund balance and to really buckle down. And for a school our size, to be able to have this type of position is really exciting. We're kind of looking at the whole child and the health and safety in every aspect. So I think this is really a proud moment for our district and really exciting. And I'm really glad that our administrators recognize that this is really important. So with that, I know there's a podium right in the middle, so I apologize. But with that, I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education hire Amanda Leases as a school nurse effective November 15th, 2021.
Second?
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
I just wanted to say thank you, and again, just to echo some of the things that were said, just how exciting it is to see you investing in student health, and I'm just really excited to come and support your staff and your students. So just thank you for this opportunity. I'm really excited to start. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And, yes, okay. You're more than welcome to stay, but you don't have to, yeah. This time, at this time of the meeting, it's open for citizen comments. Citizen comments are 3 minutes. This first part is for anything on our agenda. If you have something that you'd like to say that is not on our agenda, you will have second choice at the end of our meeting. So if anybody wants to step to the podium, you have 3 minutes, and you need to just state your name and address. Okay, we're going to move on, and there'll be time at the end of the meeting if you'd like to say anything else. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam for celebration.
All right, so I'll go through the stories that have been posted to the website since our last board meeting, and we'll start with the most recent event that's been posted, which was our Halloween festivities on Friday. The parade, of course, was kind of the highlight, and I was thinking about it, and I think I mentioned it. Jeff, you can actually click on those links, and we'll bring up some more photos. But this is the first time we've been able to have the parade outside since 2018, so it's been a number of years. And it was just really nice to have the kids out there. We had this 10-minute window, right, where it wasn't going to rain. And so we were out there you got to go now, right? And so but they managed to go out there. They got the whole thing in. The marching band was great leading them out. And we got it in before the rains began, which didn't end for quite a long time. So just a really cool event. I think we have a quote from a young Fives on there that this record was told, which is I hope this lasts forever. So it can go on forever, right? So always a great fun day for kids, a very exhausting day for our staff, but it was really nice to have that.
Sell online and grow your business with.
Didn't want that to happen here.
And there are video clips of the parade and the marching band playing, and that you can see on the YouTube page. Community Helpers Day was just I thought, a unique way of just kind of articulating the close connection between the school district and some of the other local service organizations throughout the community. So this was an event Discovery Elementary put together. They brought in members of the U.S. Postal Service, the police department, the fire department, and the kids go outside and have a chance to interact with all of them. And just another great way of kind of just, again, showing that relationship between the schools and some of those organizations. And I know I've mentioned it previously at meetings, but the Williamston police have just been phenomenal in so many ways this year, especially supporting arrival and dismissal. A great example of community policing and building those relationships with our students. So, again, thank you to them for that. Be Nice, as you know, continues to be a major initiative at the district at the secondary level. It's obviously we lost a little momentum last year, but it's really picked back up and moving forward this year. One of the pieces that we're really trying to focus in on is the connection between Be Nice and our athletics programs. And so, again, this year, Be Nice coordinators have worked with the coaches and athletic teams in terms of learning about mental health and how that integrates into athletics. And we want to continue to integrate that, especially for those students that are in leadership positions and connected to athletics, so that they can take on a larger leadership role within that program. Remember a couple of years ago, we attempted a Be Nice basketball game, and so this year we brought that same concept back through a Be Nice volleyball game, which was a collaboration with Hazlitt Public Schools and their team. And it was a real nice event. A lot of information available for folks that attended about the Be Nice program, Be Nice Club, and their staff, faculty advisors were there as well. The athletes on both teams wore their Be Nice shirts to school all day and then during warm-ups. And so, again, just another way of drawing attention to the importance around student mental health and how this student initiative, this is really supposed to be a student-owned program, can have some nice dividends in terms of its benefits to our kids. And we won the game, which was also fun. Homecoming, again, it seems kind of like a while ago now, but this has happened since our last meeting. Another very successful event. We were kind of fighting the weather that week, but we managed to get everything in, including the one half of football, which was interesting. But you know, as those of you know who were there, we had rain, and then right before the parade lined up, and then just as we were ready to step off, the rain went away. We had like this blinding sun where you couldn't see down Grand River. And so we got the parade in, and then an hour after that, we had more rain than lightning storms. So we had a 3 major and a rainbow. So there was a complicated weather event for that evening. I think we had a record number of students for the homecoming dance. I mean, it was well over 400 students. So in a 600 student high school, I mean, it was, you know, very, very well attended. It was outside in the courtyard, or outside of the courtyard at the high school. And, you know, I just want to go ahead and recognize again all the faculty advisors, our student government, and our high school administration who put a ton of work into making sure all those events take place. I also want to thank NISA. When we brought back what apparently was, perhaps I think even before I've been in the district, an old tradition of the bonfire event over at the high school. And it was kind of cool. I think the kids weren't really sure, like, you know, if it was cool to be there. So when it started, there was a pretty decent turnout. But then I think after like 15 minutes, the word got out, like, hey, this is pretty cool. So like all these cars started pulling in. And so about 30 minutes into the whole place out there was full of kids, and then music and games, and obviously the bonfire and food. And the weather was really nice that evening. So a really cool new event, and NISA supported that obviously with the fire. They stayed the whole time, make sure it was safe, and then put everything out at the end. So really appreciate that. Another example of that collaboration and support between the district and those organizations. And then finally, I think this had actually happened the week of, perhaps the week before our last meeting, but I hadn't been able to post the story. But 5th grade camp, which does seem like a while ago now, but that took place. That's a tradition that's been in our district since 1972. And last year was almost a year where we lost it. But if you recall, the 5th grade teachers in the spring kind of put together a plan where they had a modified camp that was done on the grounds of the elementary campus to keep that streak alive. So this year they actually added some nice things, like the photo on the website there, that main photo. They had like a kind of like a low ropes team building course that members from the Y helped facilitate along with some parent volunteers. And that was a nice new wrinkle to the programming. Kids actually got to work together in some different team building activities that we haven't done in the past. But again, just thank you to the 5th grade staff. There's a ton of parent volunteers that are involved in that, make that opportunity available, and it's something that kids will talk about for the rest of their time in the district memories of 5th grade camp. So those are celebrations for this evening. Depending on your questions. Also, just a quick plug for the YouTube page. We put some new clips up there. So we had a couple marching band performances, some scenes of the pep rally at homecoming, and just a couple other little clips and things. So, so just to kind of plug for that page for some new content that's been posted.
So good. Any other questions for Adam? All right, we're going to move on to education update, and throw it back to Adam again.
All right, well, we have our, Nick West is here from Williamston to present our fiscal audit for 2020, 2021. So thank you for being here. I know you presented already to the finance committee, so this will be kind of a key performance. But if you have any questions as we go on, feel free to ask him or Sarah, and I'll turn it over to you. So there's a clicker up there.
That's what I was going to ask. This thing right here?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Adam. So, as Adam mentioned, my name is Nick West. I'm a manager in our audit practice at Manor Costerison, and I'm going to go over the fiscal year 2021 audit report. So, just very quickly, who we are is Manor Costerison. We're a Lansing-based CPA firm. We got about 140, 150 people, and we're very dedicated to the education niche. About a third of our staff works solely on education for about almost half the year. We do over about 100 school district audits annually. Moving on to the district, my presentation is it's going to read kind of just like the financial statements. Going to start in the front, work my way through the back. First thing is the opinion statement. So that's why you guys pay us, to provide an opinion on your financial statements. Happy to say we provide an unmodified or a clean opinion, which is the highest opinion that we as your independent auditors can provide you. So kudos to the district on a clean audit this year. Next, you'll find in the financial statements the management's discussion and analysis, or MD&A as it's commonly referred to. This is essentially your Reader's Digest version of your statements. So I think your statements this year were about 70 pages in total. If you don't want to read all 70 pages, which most people probably don't, you can look at these 10 pages or so in the MD&A. It should give you just about all the good updates you really need to know. A couple of highlights this year. The blended student count for the district for fiscal year 2021 was just under 1,900 students, down about 20 since 2020. And then there's also a good, at the very end of the MD&A, there's a paragraph there that Sarah wrote and Adam wrote that talks about some factors bearing on the district's future. COVID funding always is on the front of the mind right now. You have state revenue, ups and downs with that, which I'll kind of go over in a little bit later. But that's also a good couple bullet points there to read. So what's new for 2021? Quite a bit probably, but in terms of the financial statements, COVID funding. So the district this year spent about $1 million more in federal funds related to COVID. In particular, it was the Coronavirus Relief Funds, or CRF, and then the ESSER funds. This is going to be a common occurrence over the next couple of years. I think ESSER 2 funding is going to come out this year, ESSER 3 funding as well, so you'll probably hear me give this same spiel next year when I come back. But that's really the big highlights this year for the district in terms of the financial statements. You know, kind of see those numbers pop out throughout the slides. So moving on to actual numbers, this is your statement of net position, or the government-wide. This is the full accrual basis of accounting, so it's a little different than the fund level that you typically see. So that's why if you look at the total net position number right there, it says negative $38 million. I always like to point that out because that's a big number and it scares people. But the reason that number is so large is due to the pension and the OPEB funding on the state of Michigan. There's a large liability at the state of Michigan for pension and OPEB, and the district's just required to report your proportionate share on your books. So that's the $5.6 million, the $36.2 million. If you back those off, you guys are at about a positive $4 million net position. And this is common. 99% of the districts in the state of Michigan have a large negative net position. So a couple highlights this year. You guys' net investment in capital assets increased by almost $3 million. So what that tells us is that you guys are paying off your debt quicker than your assets are depreciating, which is always great to see. There are about $1.3 million of capital assets placed into service during the year, and there were principal payments on long-term debt of about $3.1 million. Looking at your fund level, this probably look a little bit more familiar for you. There were 3 major funds this year: the general fund, the sinking fund, and then a new capital projects fund. Across all funds, you guys had about $12.2 million of assets and about $5.2 million of fund balance. And I'll jump into the general fund balance on, oop, did my clicker die? Might have died. There we go, on this slide right here. So you can see on the left-hand column, the general fund, you guys had a net change in fund balance of positive $838,000, so adding to fund balance $838,000. That left you at the end of the year with $2.3 million in fund balance, or as a percentage of revenues, about 11%. So I think this is my 3rd year auditing the district. I want to say when I first started, you guys were under 5%, if I remember correctly. So great strides by the district to get that fund balance up. Yeah, I think my clicker died. There we go. KPIs for the district. So this is 2019, 2020 numbers because the 2021 numbers have not came out yet. But across the state, average fund balance was just under 15%. The Ingham ISD average was about 9.7%. Last year, you guys sat around 7.4%. And as I mentioned, this year, you guys are about 10.7%. So continuing to make good strides to get up towards that average year after year. So this pie chart right here, it might be a little bit hard to see, but essentially what I like about this is it really shows you how dependent the district is on state funding. So that big orange block there, that is your state revenue. So 78% of your revenue comes from the state of Michigan. About 6% comes from the federal government, and about 8% comes from property taxes. So really, you can see there, your property taxes, your federal revenue, that won't cover nearly, not even close to half of the district's expenditures. So you guys really are very susceptible to any changes in state funding. You know, last year in August, they took away some funding, if you remember correctly. This year for 2022, they increased the pure pupil allowance, but who's to say if that's going to stay there next year or not. So I always just like to point this out because it really gives you a good kind of indication of how your revenues are. So on a 3-year trend, again, probably a little hard to see. I use gray, probably not my best idea, but if you can see the third line on each column, that is your federal revenue, and that stuck out the most this year. So typically you guys are about $500,000, $600,000 in federal revenue, and I think this year you guys are about 1.8 million, if I remember correctly. So that's really the biggest change this year, is you guys' federal revenue increased a lot because of the COVID relief funds. Looking at expenditures in the general fund, about 58% of the district's expenditures are spent on instruction in the classroom, so more than half of the expenditures are in the classroom, which is great to see. About 40% are spent on support functions, and then there's some miscellaneous amounts in there for debt service and community service. And on a 3-year trend, you can see expenditures have remained fairly consistent from year to year, with instruction remaining the predominantly dominant expenditure in you guys' from year to year, just about probably 55 to 60% from year to year. Moving to the notes of the financial statements, in note 1, we do state that we audit your sinking fund expenditures in accordance with section 12.12.1. So we're looking for allowability. We're making sure that the district's following the bid process correctly. Happy to note no issues in regards to that testing. Everything looked good, and so the district's in compliance with section 12.12. You guys' debt millage rate is at about 7.8 mils. Many districts that I work with in the state of Michigan, they're in the 7 to 12 mil range, so you guys are on the lower end of that spectrum, I would say. In note 4, it's a good note to look at your capital assets. You can see how much the district has spent on vehicles, land, buildings, etc. As I mentioned, you guys added about $1.3 million this year and had about, coincidentally, $1.3 million of depreciation. In note 6, this is the detail of the bonds. So if you're ever curious on how much debt the district has or when that debt may become due, you can look at note 6 here. And then note 8 will detail out all the pension and OPEB benefits. That note gets bigger and bigger every year. I think it's probably like 15 pages this year, so I won't go into quite some detail on that because I don't want to put everybody to sleep, but if you're interested, note 8's where to look. Looking at your budget to actual for your general fund, the original and final budget called for a balanced budget for the district, and as I mentioned before, you guys had a positive variance of about $838,000, which led to a fund balance percentage of 11%, as I mentioned before. So very common this year to have a large positive variance in fund balance on the general fund side. With all that additional COVID funding this year, that replaced some expenditures that may have been there in the past. There's also a lot of variability this year in terms of school finance. Probably the craziest year in school finance I've ever dealt with. I think there's a lot of people who probably say the exact same thing. So lots of fluctuations throughout the year in terms of being in school, out of school, just a lot of variables. One thing that is new this year, you probably haven't seen this in a long time, the district did have a single audit this year. You were subject to a single audit. You're subject to that when you spend more than $750,000 of federal expenditures. So this year, as I mentioned, you guys spent about $1.8 million. Because of that, we had to audit your coronavirus relief funds and your ESSER funds. So essentially, we're testing those for allowability, making sure they're being spent on what they should be spent on, following the process and internal controls and everything. Happy to note no issues there. Everything looked good. They're being spent for how they should be spent on. You'll see at the bottom, there's a question there, auditee qualified as a low-risk auditee, and that box is checked no. That's just because you guys have not had a single audit in the past 2 years. There's many districts this year with the increase in federal funding that have not been subject to a single audit before that had it, such as you guys yourself. And really what that means for the district, pretty much nothing. As an auditor, I just need to test more of your federal expenditures, so I had to test 40% this year instead of the typical 20% if you're low risk. So moving forward, the district continues to have a single audit and there are no issues. You guys will be low risk in 2 years. There was one financial statement finding this year in regards to the food service fund. MDE has a maximum allowable amount that you can keep in fund balance in the food service fund, and the district was over that balance this year. This is very common. Again, the federal government increased their reimbursement rate for meals this year, and you guys gave away all free meals this year compared to in the past you've had paid lunches. So this year I want to say the reimbursement rate was probably about $4.2 per meal. You know, if you're typically charging around $3, $3.25 a meal, well, there's $1 extra per meal times a lot of meals. You can see how it adds up pretty quickly. So really what this means for the district just needs to submit a spend down plan to MDE saying, yes, we are over the allowable amount, and this is how we plan to spend it down over the next year or two. And finally, should have all received a governance letter at some point. Hopefully the board, if not, let me know, I can get you that. Really in there we would communicate any uncorrected misstatements, disagreements with management, anything we thought we needed to bring to your attention. Happy to note, nothing of that sort. Really appreciated working with Sarah this year. I know she kind of got thrown in there in the end of June. It wasn't really her year or her numbers that she worked on per se, but really appreciate all of her help and her hard work as well as the rest of the administration in helping us finish the audit. So, and then lastly, try not to bore you too quickly on some new GASBs that are upcoming. There's GASB 87 related to leases. This is effective for fiscal year 2022. So if the district has any leases for buses or buildings, a conversation probably should be had in the next couple of months as to how that'll affect your financial statements. I think talking with Sarah doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of those out there. GASB 96 is subscription-based information technology, or subscription-based textbooks. So same sort of deal as the leases. If you guys do have any of those, or you're thinking about doing any of those, just a conversation probably to be had as to how that's going to affect the numbers going forward. And that was all I had. So thank you again for allowing me to present to you today, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
So you said roughly 2.2 million ahead of where we were back in 2015. So you said 2.3 million in fund balance?
Yes, as of 6:30. Yep, I
We were
believe.
about 100,000 in 2015, 6 years ago. And you were on the board?
Yeah. Well, we have barely $100,000.
Yeah, because I was there right when the votes were to move
Yeah.
some things differently because we didn't want to get rid of, you know, that $100,000 student, 100 student decrease from 13 to 14. And we made some decisions. And now with the leadership of Adam and decisions of the finance committee that's brought to the board, we've gone from a $100,000 fund balance to 2.3 million. I think that's something that people need to realize. I mean, this is something, this board has done a lot of good work. Our superintendent has been fabulous. And, I mean, I've been here since 2013, and I watched it go and come right back. So thank you for your auditing and pointing that out.
Yeah. So I have a
There's
question,
some-
Nick, in reference to.
There's been some good work here.
In reference to the fund balance for the food, is there any kind of build-in for inflation that we're allowed to build in so we don't budget too much being spent out and then end up having
Yep.
an increase in food costs?
So really, they don't take into account of inflation. Really, what it is MDE says. I told you wrong earlier. I apologize. As soon as you called me, I looked it up. They allow you one third of your expenditures for a fiscal year. That's essentially what your fund balance should be for that fund. So say you spend $1 million in your food service fund balance, or your food service fund, excuse me, can't have more than $333,000 in fund balance, essentially. So it will kind of vary from year to year. As a side, it really should increase, I guess, from year to year. You probably will spend more and more on expenditures in the food service fund balance. But with that in mind, there's a district that we work with that I think has been over that amount for 9 years straight, I want to say. They're slowly working to get it down. So it's not I don't think it has to be a 1 year, all of a sudden just spend a bunch of money just to spend a bunch of money.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Adam or Sarah, have we heard anything from MDE on when that spend down plan has to be in?
So I believe once we submitted our audit and financials today, and then I believe they have to review it, and then they send something to us. So I would think in the next few months.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds right. Yep, they'll, yeah, exactly what you said. They submitted all that, and then they go through every single district in the state of Michigan and look through that. So it may take a little bit of time to get there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for making it easy to understand. There.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? So this is a lot of information, so don't feel like this is your only opportunity. If you go through this again or think of something tonight, you can always call Sarah and get you the information.
Yep, absolutely. My email's at the end of that presentation, so by all means, if you have any more questions, feel free to email me. We can always set up a call or anything.
All right, thank you
Awesome.
very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Have a
it.
great night.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, bullet goal 3, communication and marketing, and I'm gonna throw it over to you. Adam.
So, as we've talked about in some previous meetings, I don't know there's going to be anything here that's, earth-shattering. We've kind of gone through this process recently. So, kind of using the same format we used back in May, I kind of highlighted the areas involved with our communication and marketing plan. Just a couple highlights. We piloted the community newsletter that went out in May, June. That was well received, and so that'll be something we'll look to continue. It's kind of a roll-up of Points of Pride at the end of the year. We've discovered a good system for how to make that work. I know pre-COVID, the board had some presentations on cyber safety and cyber awareness and things along those lines. And so obviously had a year hiatus last year with everything going on, but we are looking to kind of bring those back this year in terms of securing our internal communications and how that interacts with email and things along those lines. I think after our last time we reviewed this, we were able to complete the installation of the streaming services infrastructure at the football track complex, and so that was what was used to live stream and record graduation last June. That was a pretty significant undertaking. I know Brandon Weingartz did a lot of work with the city to figure out how to build the infrastructure for that, the nearest connection, and so there was a lot more to it than what we'd originally thought. But now that we have that built, it should be there for the foreseeable future for the years to come. And then the last thing I think I'll note that's probably new here, a small piece, but more internal communication, but we did go digital with our TV broadcasting course at the high school. We were able to purchase new equipment for that class and get them out of the analog era and into the digital realm, and kids are able to do a lot more creative things now with that advanced technology. So, any questions I can address on that board goal? I think one thing too, just to kind of go back to link this to board goal 2, as I think I mentioned previously, we are looking to have a parent survey go out. Could be as soon as tomorrow. Sarah and I will kind of chip away constructing that on the ESSER funding, getting some community input in terms of how those funds will be put to use. So hopefully that'll be this week we can get that out and start to see what folks' thoughts are on that.
Any questions? Board goal 4.
All right, so moving to board goal 4, some kind of format, just in terms of kind of setting up a memo that hits some of the highlights. So I'll just kind of work through this and hit some things. Strategy 3 under objective 1, stop the bleed training. That falls in line with the first aid training goal. Ironically, that was done this afternoon during our PD day. All staff that had been hired last year or this year attended that, and that training was put on by NISA. Again, another example of that collaboration. We did a great job with that. Strategy 4, the aquatic safety. After a year off, I think we mentioned that in the previous meeting, but those students are having those opportunities again. Moving through restorative justice practices, those continue to be integrated into board policies, and obviously, more importantly, implementation across our district. In fact, I think there's another example of one of the policies this evening you're looking at where that's been added. Moving down under mental health, dealing with trauma, depression, anxiety, etc., and how we're combating that with our student population. One thing that I'm really appreciative of that kind of fell off the table last year because of so many different things that were going on. But like we talked about, in everything that we do, there's always a research base behind that. And so we have a book club that Dr. Cook leads, that all our administrators, social workers, counselors, RTC coordinators, and some other folks attend. And it's really, the book's focus is on student trauma and mental health. And so the idea is we're kind of like making sure those folks are well versed in it and then allowing them to go back down into the classrooms and our paraprofessionals and our teachers and other support staff and make sure that they have that awareness in terms of some of the things they'll see from students, having an understanding of why those behaviors might be occurring, and being able to respond to them appropriately or find a staff member that can support them if that need should arise. So it's nice to see something that kind of fell away last year kind of back. And in fact, in looking at the PD agendas, which the board will see at the next meeting today, there was a lot of work being done at the building level around that social emotional learning component, making sure that our students are able to achieve academically because they have their minds in the right place, their emotional social needs are being met. So there's a lot of work going on there, so really, really appreciative of Dr. Cook's leadership and all the staff that are a part of that. Moving to improve emergency preparedness, the one new piece here that's coming up, and the date's actually been moved to December, but is under strategy 2, where the district will establish a rehearse reunification plan in conjunction with police and first response organizations. To my knowledge, I'm not familiar with another district that has taken this on to the extent that we have. It's been 2 years since our last reunification drill. I think actually, Julie, you were part of that, in terms of having to come and pick the kids up, and we run through the whole thing, right? So this year we're going to take it back a step and go back more to a tabletop exercise and incorporate our bomb threat protocol, because there's a lot of things with that in terms of responses to that that have changed since we were probably in school. And so we're going to get support from the Michigan State Police in terms of training our administrators up and re-looking at our emergency operations plan and making any adjustments that are needed. So that this will be one of the years where we run through that drill, but this year it'll be more of a tabletop format. And that will be in December now. Otherwise, just note some minor facilities adjustments. We continue to enhance, adding more key card readers to different locations, and we're making some small adjustments to our municipal office, physical security. The emergency drills will be completed just as they always are, in coordination with law enforcement and other emergency management professionals. In December, at least that's our target date, the board is going to see the bids and plan for the secured entrances at Kids Quarter, Little Hornets, and Discovery Elementary. The Finance Committee's already seen that, I think, or no? We did look at that. So at least the initial concept, and then we're working on getting the bids in November, and then we'll bring those plans and the bid results to the board hopefully in December. So those are kind of the highlights of board goal 4. What questions can I address?
Adam, one question under strategy 4, under objective 1, you had said that after a year off, that the 4th graders were able to go and get the instruction. Does that mean that the 5th graders that are currently 5th graders have not had that, and will they get that?
I don't believe at this point there's a plan to get them over there to do it, but I can follow up on that.
Okay.
It's a logistical challenge in getting the kids over there, but I'll verify.
Okay, thank you.
I know these have to be a surprise in order to be effective, but do we talk with our young learners about that they might be going through these things during the year in terms of emergency preparedness?
So,
Because it could be scary.
Yeah, so one of the things I think we've actually gotten better at, especially with our younger students, is making sure that before drills, especially the lockdown ones, which are always,
Yeah.
the most scary, making sure that parents are aware in advance so they can kind of talk to their children, in advance of those events taking place.
Okay.
And that brings up a good point, right, with those. We've done these announced, unannounced, kind of a combination of things, but one piece you really have to put in, you have to really think through is what is the traumatic event that you're putting on students in order to run those drills, right? And so, I mean, the kids have to know what to do, the staff need to know, what they need to do. But they are, I mean, that's, they're scary things. And so, we need to be very thoughtful about, how we plan those and how we follow up with kids afterwards to make sure that, they're okay.
Any other questions? So this part of these board goals and updates, so 2 weeks ago or whenever our last board meeting, we were updated on board goal 1 and board goal 5, and then here the 2, 3, and 4. So this information I will keep because you're going to use this to do Adam's evaluation. So I know Adam, I do believe, sent all of us his self-evaluation. We'll have some other pieces. I'm going to throw it over to Chris in a minute, and Chris is going to tell you about other pieces you'll be getting. But here, the timeline will be, we're going to need to have his evaluation completed by our next board meeting, which is the 15th? The 15th. So Chris will talk about this, you'll be getting the evaluation like we did, I feel like it really was only a couple months ago, not that long ago. You'll get that same thing, you'll take this information. If you have a question or want something more specific examples, you're gonna reach out to Adam to get those. You're gonna plug your numbers in, and then we get one number. We will discuss it at our next board meeting, which is November, so we can vote on his evaluation in December. So we're all clear. The reason we do that is if we were ever in a situation where we wanted to part ways with our superintendent, that we would be able to start looking in January. They would fill out their contract until June. A lot of school districts do it that way. Our board, I don't know how long ago that was, Jeff, that we decided to do it that way just to give us, if we did it in the spring, it wouldn't give us a lot of time if we needed to hire. Several years ago. Last year with COVID, we did get a little off schedule. This is why this is happening, so it seems so new or early. If you have any questions, let me know, but I'm going to look it over to Chris so he can give you more information.
Well, you said mostly everything, which is fine. I will be sending out by the end of this week the blank form for all of you to fill out, and you need to get that back to me no later than a week from, well, I'm going to say the Thursday after that, because I need to make sure it gets into the packet. So it may even be Wednesday. I may even only give you till Wednesday. So probably Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, they'll be due. I'll get them out by probably Wednesday or Thursday this week. And then if you've got any questions, let me know. But it's like what we did earlier this year. It's just filling out the forms. Do not make up numbers. Go with the numbers that are on the sheet, so that we can have equivalent numbers across all of our sheets. And then I will compile all of that into one document that will be the evaluation.
Any questions about that? All right, let's move on. Next, back to Adam. Upcoming presentations and discussion items.
So November 15th, Mr. Paulson will be here to provide an update on athletics and enrichment. And then moving to the December meeting, Dr. Cook will be doing a presentation on measures of academic progress, or MAP, one of the new systems we have in place in terms of a way to monitor and respond to student academic growth. And we're also anticipating that we're going to have bids back, potentially on both the roof at Discovery Elementary and the secured entrances, so it'll be a heavy financial meeting as well in December.
Exciting. All right, moving on to board committee reports, finance. Chris.
Yeah, not much. We had a meeting on October 7th, and primarily it was an audit review, but we did take a look at the overall plan for the facilities update that Adam was just talking about, and we also looked at ESSER funds and the ESSER update of what those funds are being used for. But that was pretty much it. The majority of the meeting was the presentation. It was a more in-depth presentation than what you heard tonight. So, in regards to the audit.
All right, board policy. Sarah, do you want to take these one at a time, combine them? Totally up to you.
Well, I'll first start by saying we had a meeting October 11th, and all these policies are up for discussion later tonight, so we can hold off the discussion until then.
Okay. And that goes with the November 8th meeting also?
Which is next week, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Policy committee, you have a meeting November 8th.
Yes, we do.
So behind. ISOA, Jeff.
So, no, September's is in here.
September 1st, yeah, that's what's in the packet.
Is it minutes at the end of this? Yeah, so the minutes that are in there from September, it looks like.
You want to just highlight October?
Yeah, so, but the information that we talked about, is
Yes.
correct. So, Hope Public Schools did a fantastic presentation on their equity strategy in their school system. So they've got members of all different areas of their staff that are part of that. They went over that, and then we kind of talked about what was going on inside each district. The meeting unfortunately was not, normally we will have 10 of the 12 districts take part. I think we only had 6. Just timing and everything. So we have a meeting Wednesday, and there'll be a lot more information. And I will not be at the next board meeting to present that, so you want to be on the meeting on Wednesday?
I was going to ask if there was a Zoom option still available.
Well,
If
yes,
there is a Zoom
yeah,
option.
yeah, there is. We have 3 school boards, Lansing, East Lansing, and Okemos, that choose to attend those via Zoom or remotely.
Yeah, I can be your friend.
I mean, I'll be at the meeting
Yeah.
to run it, but then
But,
it needs to be presented at our next meeting. That'd be great.
Okay, next, up for discussion, lots of board policies. So I will throw it over to Sarah, and Sarah, you decide if you want to throw it over to Adam. Or anybody else.
So we, again, no surprise, we went through many policies. I believe there were 10 that we went through. I want to direct your attention though to policy 3600, which is reimbursement of expenses. The other policies we thought as a committee could come forth with no issues or surprises being brought forth to the whole board, but we wanted the whole board's input on this. And maybe Adam can give more of a detailed background on this policy.
So
I'm
3600.
trying to find it.
I'm I'm sorry to put you on the spot. 3,600 reimbursement of expenses for district employees.
Right?
Is it out of order? Because,
Page 13.
Well, and it also has like in parentheses 3,600, but then off to the side it's 3,605, the district credit cards, I think.
Sarah, you're interested in talking about the board members?
Oh, there it
Reimbursed
is.
for travel.
Reimbursement?
Yes. I'm sorry, yes, that's the one
All
that,
right, so it's 1168.
yes. And then specifically 1168R as well, that goes along with that.
So
I apologize.
all right, so, yeah, so this is on page 123 of your packet. So if memory serves correctly, what the committee had conversation around members of the board being reimbursed to attend for attending various board sanctioned events, and they were interested in the full board having a conversation around both the process and I guess when members of the board would be reimbursed for the participation in official board events.
Yeah.
So that is then highlighted in yellow on page 123 to kind of prompt additional conversation among the full board as to, like I said, when and if the full board should be reimbursed for expenses.
Yeah, and the reason why we thought as a committee that this should go before the whole board is because every year we, as a board, dictate how much we are quote unquote paid for our meetings. And historically, this board, particularly this board, has said that we will not get paid for meetings, whether it is full board meetings or mini meetings. Obviously, that can change at any point in time, but this particular 1168 talks about if you were potentially to go to a conference, you could potentially say, I would like to get paid for my mileage. That could be for any meeting, I guess. So that's why we would like input from the whole board as to what this looks like.
So are we just talking reimbursement for mileage, or is this kind of?
Yeah, so we can't, so for instance, we have that MSMB conference that requires a delegate to attend, and that is up in Traverse City. So it's not, say if you had to stay the night, it's not to pay for a hotel, but it could potentially, whatever we discuss or vote on with this, say you could get paid for your mileage.
So you want
So you
to
can
elaborate?
Yes, please.
Right, so for like a thing like a conference, right, the board member could be compensated, could be reimbursed for attending that conference. So let's say it was an overnight, right? So, but you have to get the board's approval prior to doing that. So let's say you're going to Traverse City, you're gonna drive your own car up there for the conference, you get to spend the night at the hotel, have breakfast, go to the conference, and then you drive back. With the board's prior approval, you can do that. Again, it just needs to be brought to the board in advance, and the whole board would approve. And that's not necessarily up for change, because again, you could always do that. I think specifically what the committee was drilling down into here was like just normal board activities. So, for example, under this policy, all of you could be reimbursed for driving to this meeting tonight from your home of record, right? So it's just whether you want to change that in here, keep it the same. As far as I know, none of you have ever submitted reimbursement for any of your travel. But I didn't feel like, in terms of the review of the policy, I could make a change or even a recommendation to that, because it's really, it's up to you. Yeah, it's a board piece.
So is the board, or the policy committee looking for us to say just yes or no for this, if this is something that we would like to be reimbursed for, or?
Yes, I mean, we didn't want to remove something because it was based, if you want to be paid to drive from here to there, you can. I mean, it was affect,
I think the first line is enough, in my opinion. I don't think that anybody, I mean, we've always said that we're not getting paid to be members of the board. I mean, we travel around our city, you know, many times to represent the board, but I don't think that we need to be reimbursed for that.
I do think, though, we do need to be reimbursed for conferences.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
said the
well,
first,
and that's, everything on there is covered, so if you decide we want to send Sarah to a workshop that that the state board is putting on, and it's an overnight, then we can approve her to go and have her, all of her travel paid
Right.
for. But this is really just outside of things, meetings that we're going, you know, for here, like coming to the school board meeting, going to the ISD meetings or something like that. We're not going to approve every board meeting for mileage or something.
Right.
But I also think, though, you know, because now you can do your education, you know, can all be done online, was able to be done online 9 years ago, so I mean, it still can be done online. That if a board member chooses to go to a conference for education, that should come back to the board if we're gonna, you know, for
Yeah.
sure.
It has to, because
It
it
has
says
to.
there, it says
Yeah.
that they have to, it says the board member shall not be reimbursed for any travel unless it's been approved by the board in advance for the travel.
I mean, my suggestion, Jeff, is that
I
we just
think that,
we
we
get
think
rid
the
of the
yellow
yellow.
should go.
And I just say we get rid of the yellow. I mean, I think that the first line in that last paragraph is enough to cover someone that wants to go
So
to
travel
MASB
period, get rid of the
conference.
yellow.
What?
Get rid of the yellow.
Yeah,
I'm fine with
Yeah, because I mean, this is specific to meetings and district business. I mean, going to a conference might not necessarily be district, that could be growth and enrichment. It's not necessarily district business, I would
Yeah.
say, like a board meeting is.
I'm fine with Chris's suggestion. I feel like it's hard to, I mean, our staff isn't reimbursed to drive back and forth, so it just, to me, it seems a little bit to get reimbursed just for driving to board events and to our meetings.
Well, we didn't want to take money out of anybody's pocket, so we thought we'd ask for it.
Right, and that's what we do. I mean, it comes out of our same pot, so, Amanda, Dave, any thoughts?
I think Chris's suggestion is reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's fine. The only thing that came to mind was that MASB conference, so sounds like we've got that covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just curious if you would prefer that it's written, I guess in the negative, for lack of a better term, versus the affirmative, so that we know that they're not gonna be.
that. Yes, I agree.
If you remove it, then it's ambiguous, in terms of whether
Oh.
the reimbursement is allowed or not.
I would agree.
okay,
So
Yeah.
board members will not be
Be reimbursed.
yeah,
reimbursed for
That's
their own
fine.
transportation from that.
So I could make that change and have it updated for your next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think it doesn't need to come back to us. I do also want, I want to just touch base on the conference pieces. We do have money, the board has money set aside for conferences. It's not a ton of money, and we have had people doing conferences, so like if this is a conference for some reason that is far away, it will have to come back to the board as a whole to get that approved. So just so we're clear on that, you don't go signing up for whatever you want and expecting to get that paid for. It does need to come back here, and that process needs to be filled out. Any other questions on this one? Anything else you want to highlight on these? So I have a quick question on, I just want a clarifying statement, the dress code. You know, a lot of this has been taken out, but we're still, so we're kind of having it seems to me like an umbrella statement on the dress code. Each building is going to have dress code in their handbook as stated.
So every building already addresses dress code in their
Right,
handbooks.
so that's there.
What was done here in the policy revision, 8240, which is on page
121?
120.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So it just added kind of a catch-all statement, kind of provide the administration from the board, kind of like you said, a broad umbrella in terms of what you would like to see in the establishment of a dress code, in addition to that you're advocating that one is created, which was the only line in the previous version of the policy.
From 1997.
Correct.
That doesn't seem so far along the way.
And so that's the only policy. What they're trying to do here is, in a slightly more descriptive fashion, outline in more detail how the administration will interpret the board's guidance in terms of what is a violation to the dress code. And so pending the board's approval, this would become actionable this year upon your approval if you choose to approve it. The elementary handbooks, we have let them know that this work is in progress, but theirs is different, just an elementary schools. So it looks a lot different from this. So we've let the principals know that the board's going to be talking about this and that the secondary buildings will potentially make a change to their handbook. But more than likely, you'll see any revisions to the handbook language in the elementary handbooks this May, April, when you normally get your handbook update proposals from the principals. That address your question?
And to go along with that, just because this doesn't go through policy every year, like Jeff alluded to, it hasn't been updated in quite some time, doesn't mean that the board doesn't see it every year, because we see it through our handbooks every year when they come through in the spring.
Any other questions on these policies? Are we ready to move them for action at our next meeting?
Yes.
Yes. All right, great. If any other questions come up, you can reach out to Sarah or Adam or anybody on the board, Dave or Julie. Next, bus purchase. Yay.
All right, so unfortunately, bus 26 has encountered a situation where it's going to need some significant repairs. It has not been operational for some time. And if you look at kind of the summary of the memo there, when you're looking at a bus that's more than halfway through its expected life expectancy, I don't know that it makes financial sense to put the type of money that would be needed to make it roadworthy again versus just purchasing a new bus. I mean, if you add up the two different expenses, you're coming in close to half the cost of purchasing a new bus that would get us at least 10 years of service. So we have bid a single new bus from Midwest Transit. They were to low bid an international bus which matches the existing fleet. And the idea would be, hopefully, you don't know what supply chain issues right now, but pending the board's approval, we could get the replacement of bus 26 on site prior to the start of spring athletics, which is always the busy season for transporting sports, the busiest of all the seasons for transporting our student athletes. So that is the proposal and the rationale for that.
I remember bus 25 and 26 were put into service. It doesn't seem that long ago. But
Yeah, is that when we got
yeah,
the ride?
24 was the last bus, and 25 and 26 came in, and that's when we got a nice
Got
ride
a
on
tour
the
and a
bus.
ride,
Yeah.
still smelled good.
Oh my god, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was the second time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you guys must have just gotten.
Oh, yeah, we got a new bus.
Yeah.
Bus 26 has always been kind of a rough ride. It was kind of described to me. I mean, I can drive a bus, but that's apparently not one of the favorites of the transportation department.
So Adam, you talk about supply chain. Has Brandon looked into what the current situation is in
Yeah,
regard to?
well, I mean, just like the work trucks, it moves to the right significantly every time he calls the check. So, like, you could probably just stop calling at this point because it's just going to keep moving. But we're hoping if the board approves, we'll get our name in the line. And the last update he got was March, but again, that moved 3 months to the right from his initial conversation. conversation.
Has there been any update on the work truck?
Same thing. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure some 10-year-old has got that shit figured out somewhere in his
Jeez.
bedroom. Right?
Yeah.
Per bedroom, per bedroom. Any questions about the buses? Definitely needed.
I just didn't know if we had done anything regarding leasing versus purchasing. Is there any benefit at this point, being the higher cost, trying to like lease and then buying it 3 years? Or vice versa?
Yeah, I think part of it is looking at how we space our buses out in terms of when we're gonna need to, the next round.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this particular case, purchasing this new would push this out 10 years at least, which kind of creates a nice space between the bubble that we're gonna see start to appear in 2028. So the finance committee in an upcoming meeting, Graham's actually done a nice job of a nice spreadsheet that shows all the current buses and their replacement dates. And one of the things we'll need to look at is, again, how to space out buses. They know off the top of my head, like 2028, there's a big bubble that's coming.
Right.
But that was the rationale. The other piece is, and again, I don't want to get too much into the finance committee's lane, but as we looked at what leasing prices are looking at 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we were getting some great deals on leases. And those deals have, they're no longer good deals.
I noticed the increase. Yeah, you're like 12,000 a year, now we're like 15.
Yeah.
So holding it for 3, I mean, we still are probably at that 95. I just didn't know if
Well,
this is the
that's
first
also-
time that I've been on the board that we're pricing a brand new bus. So I didn't know if 95 or 100,000 was
Yeah. Well,
on
this
the
is.
higher COVID end of car prices or.
This is the highest price for purchase that we've seen. I mean, so the prices have gone up, quite a bit. I'd say in this case, we used to be in the high 80s, 89,000. Now they're up to, what is 95, 80.
Mm-hmm.
So they've gone up, but the leasing prices have gone up too. And if you extrapolate the cost of the lease and then the final purchase price, when you're trying to buy it off lease, in many cases you're going to be paying more total for the vehicle than you would if you just bought it up front. I think the other piece too, unfortunately, is that we're not getting right now, I don't know if this is because of the supply chain or because, people are desperate for any, goods and services right now. They're not being as forthcoming with the purchase price off lease. So, again, going back 5 years, 4 years ago, when we entered into a lease agreement, we knew what the purchase price was going to be from them when they came off after 3 years when the lease ended. So you could build that into your estimate in terms of what the total cost of the vehicle would be. If we don't have that information, then it's an additional variable that is difficult to budget for. So
We're doing the same thing on anything that's diesel, especially diesel trucks. I mean, we were somewhere 3 weeks ago and they said, here's the price, and here's the $8,000 basically COVID price. I mean, things are being increased because of the supply chain and because of COVID. I mean, those are.
Yeah, it's just a reality.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Buses, always a hot topic, always, every year.
we're not done yet.
No,
We'll
we're
talk
not.
about this more this winter.
We are not. But I do feel like I do kudos to the finance committee. I think for years we've kind of come up with a plan and now our budgeting for them and able to
Go forward, yeah.
instead of just having a bubble of a mess of buses. Okay, if you have any other questions about any of those policies or buses before 2 weeks, reach out to anyone on the policy committee or Adam for the bus purchase. Otherwise, we will move them for the November 15th meeting.
I didn't.
Next, action item, routine consent. Do I have a motion for the calendar?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Dave, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we do not have any roll call items. We have one separate action item, and that is the proposal of the theater production class.
Make a motion that the Williamston Board of Education approve the proposal from the WHS theater class as presented.
Second.
Second?
Second.
Second, Julie. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No?
Okay, we've gone over our board goals extensively. Again, looking at the evaluation, Adam's evaluation. If you have any questions, please reach out to any of us or Adam to get Adam if there's specific questions. The process, I'm going to say reach out to Chris because he's a whiz at it. Be looking for that information. We don't have any correspondence, but we're at the end of our meeting where we have citizen comments. This can be anything. It does not have to be an agenda item, and you have 3 minutes. You just need to step to the podium, state your name and address, and you will be timed. At the 2-minute mark, you'll get a 1-minute warning, and then when your 3 minutes up, you'll be notified. I do have to ask if I have a volunteer board member to do the timing because I forgot my phone and I don't have. So Julie, will you, I think you gave me information. Okay. So, do we have any citizen comments from anyone in the audience? Okay. We don't need that. Thank you. So next part of our agenda, board member requests and reports. Do you have any board member requests, reports, any items you'd like to share?
I guess, I thought I heard Jeff say that he was also gonna be gone at the next board meeting, so I'm gonna be gone, because that's opening day,
So you'll
so
be gone November
that means nobody else
Yeah,
can not be here.
Right, and you're November 15th. Okay, thank you. I have to think. Cindy, can I talk to you about that tomorrow? And so I'll discuss with Adam exactly what's going to be on that agenda and what we're looking for, and we might need to debate if, I mean, I know the proposals, the bids,
His evaluation.
his evaluation would be the big one.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll talk to Adam about that tomorrow and get back with you. Be looking for a doodle poll that might need to come out, depending on what we're looking at. Thank you for the reminder. I know you told us that ahead of time, and I just wasn't thinking. Anybody else? I have one thing. Someone asked me a question, and I'm not sure. I didn't know the answer to this. So, our seniors, I believe it's our senior class, if they have a parking spot, they get to decorate it in a parking lot. And someone was asking me how that will be removed after they graduate. Like, is it like? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So that was a question. If their parking spot stays until it just wears off, or what the paint is, or what it is, I don't have. I mean, we've had
Yeah, I
rain,
don't-
so it hasn't.
I know it's up to the student to bring their own paint and to paint the spot if they choose to do that. So I don't know if that means that they would have to get enough paint to cover over the old one and then,
And then I don't know.
which would be a lot of paint.
Put black on top.
That's a discussion.
No, I mean, so that's just a question that was asked, and I didn't know, but I thought, oh, that is interesting. I mean, I think it's cool, I think it's a great tradition to start, but then I was wondering that answer too. Lastly, I won't take up a lot of time. I do want to thank Adam and all the administrators and teachers and staff and everyone who's made this year up to this point go really as smoothly as possible with all the activities. You can tell that this town has been just itching to get out and participate. Some sporting events that I never really saw that many students. It's, there's a ton of students. The parade was packed. People are coming out and wanting to get back to normal life, and it's really exciting to see. And I just thank all of our staff and administrating for, getting us going and moving and having seems like a really successful beginning of the year. I thank all of you for reading all this material and coming prepared. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?